And welcome on in, everybody, to the Check Your Brain podcast, hosted by me, Tony Mazur. Every Wednesday, these episodes for free go out, whether they're on all the podcast platforms, YouTube, Rumble, whatever platform is out nowadays, as well as Patreon. If you want more episodes like this and early access to guests, go to patreon.com/Tony Mazur. For just $3 a month, you get a lot of content. Trust me, prices are kind of all over the place right now. So while you're going to the grocery store and you're going to shop for all the overpriced stuff, why not pay extra bucks more for my podcast? Or don't, and you just enjoy this and you stumbled upon it because you too are a nostalgia buff like myself. And that is why I'm doing this podcast today. And it's a real pleasure to talk to people. And for my years of working in radio for 15 plus years, I've talked to a lot of people that were people I grew up with on television shows, movies, music, comedians, artists. And it's always, I start getting lost in it and I have to kind of put myself back to earth. I'm breaking the fourth wall right now where you're going like, wow, this is somebody I grew up watching and I'm like such a fan, but then also I have to be the broadcaster and I have to have some kind of decorum as I do the podcast. So I'm going to kind of weave between both of them as I welcome my guests. So actually my guests, plural here in today, it's a father-son duo. It's a father-son combo on here. It's not Father's Day, but it may as well be here on the podcast. And I'm joined by Max and Marc Weiner. How are you, fellas?
Tony, every day is Father's Day when I'm with him.
Really is. It has to be a treat. As with having Marc Weiner as your father, I can't even imagine what kind of childhood. I mean, my dad had his own quirks, but having Marc Weiner as your father is incredible.
Yeah.
Tell him about the slide.
Oh no, that's for another podcast.
What slide, or is this a child?
When he tried to build me a water slide when I was young, and it didn't really go as planned. It kind of fell apart mid-slide, and I went crotch first into one of the wooden support benches that he put.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. He's a performer. He's not a contractor or construction worker. And
thank you, Thank you.
And if he ever gets out of line, I just threatened to sue him, so it's okay.
Well, first, Max, I want to bring you up here, and I want everybody, if you have an opportunity, and if you're watching on the video here on YouTube, go to mindofmax.com. You get to see that performance and art really does run in the family here. Talk about first, Max, about what you do. Where can we find you outside of just the website? And I guess I'm assuming your father's the one who really got you into it, or is this like a whole family thing where you're like, uh-oh, the gene's starting to hit me. I'm feeling it in the blood right now.
I mean, yeah, it's I guess it's genetic. I've always loved to perform and create, and you can't really help it if you have it in you. And yeah, I always loved to draw. I think the earliest I can remember, so I'm an artist and a musician, and I'm into comedy. I'm into really anything creative. And I remember I used to have this. I love the Captain Underpants book series by Dave Gilkey. Have you ever read that one?
Too many times, yes.
Yeah, so I love that whole idea of like the kids stuck in school and then making their own comic books. And I remember in middle school, I did this cartoon called Savor, and it was this it kind of like a what was it, Power Rangers type of thing, and he, like, it was kind of like James Bond meets Power Rangers, where he had this helmet so it could really be anybody. You remember those?
Oh, I sure do.
Yeah, it was cool. And like, that was the first way that I started to express that creativity. And then in high school, I think I had this one teacher who I really didn't like, and I made this whole Captain Underpants like style comic book based off of this guy, Rabbi Greenberg. And I had this whole like kind of Family Guy-esque drawing of him, and me, like my friends and I, we would just make these ridiculous, like, Max and the gang try to stop this guy from doing this, and this. It was so much fun. But yeah, and then music too. I like to do folk music, country, rock and roll, really anything. And I have, I think, 3 albums out now on Apple Music and Spotify, wherever you can find streaming music. And yeah, I just love to create anything.
And now, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I'm 32.
32. Okay, so you were born during the Wienerville time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I grew up going on the set.
I mean, it's incredible to think that coming from a performance family, like I came from a little bit, my mom's an artist, and my father, though he was a police officer, he always wanted to do some kind of journalism or broadcasting. And we've had some performance in the family, but I was kind of the first of everybody else to kind of break away from we never really had the quote unquote family business, but you really were born into this. And you really kind of just picked up the torch where you're where your dad set the standard.
Yeah, what kind of art did your mom do?
She's still creating. She's still doing a lot of she's doing more like kind of fused glass right now, but she did watercolor. She did kind of like a paper mache type, but drawing and painting. And I did that as well. I wanted to be a cartoonist. Being from Ohio, we were heavily influenced by Calvin and Hobbes, and I got a chance to meet Bill Amond, who created Foxtrot when I was a kid. It was like my first big celebrity. It was like in the 90s, I get a chance, like, oh, it's the Foxtrot guy. And I didn't know what to say. I sat there, I'm like,
yeah.
So it was really cool. And then as I got older, I started getting into community theater and then eventually radio. And it was more performance based as opposed to me drawing and painting and everything. So it's a lot of fun to really do express that creativity. And I think a lot of people have that chance where they're in a family that does encourage that. And looking at your father sitting next to you right there, I'm sure he's like, absolutely. I don't think he discouraged you from getting into any of this.
Oh, no. He's always been so supportive. Like whatever I want to go, whatever avenue, just like you're saying, you have like all the different things. It's you have to have support, or else you're not going to do it.
So, Mark, I mean, obviously, I'm sure you're very proud of Max and what he's been able to put out.
I'm proud of him.
I'm proud of him.
So 32. So that means you were, at that time you were on the set and everything for Wienerville. And for folks who remembered Wienerville, I mean, this was a show that as a kid, there's something that drew a lot of people to it from a vaudevillian aspect. That you'd think by the 90s, a puppet show might be kind of passé, it might be old fashioned, but it attracted a massive audience. And everyone I knew when I was a kid, I'm 35, that we would come home and they would show the reruns during the week when we get home from school. So being born in the 80s, but growing up in the 90s, we didn't have I think the after school specials were kind of going by the wayside because we had Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. And those were the big options at that time. So Nickelodeon had time to fill, and they decided, yeah, let's put more blocks of Wienerville during the week. And basically all my friends, we all talked about it. And to this day, when I tell them who I'm talking to today, they're like, shut up. Really? Is this who you really have on? So it's a really cool thing for folks who are watching on the video. There's the intro to the show. I guess, Mark, talk about the how you were able to pitch this. How did you get under Nickelodeon's radar in a network that at that time was kind of moving away from a little bit more of the 1980s pinwheel live action stuff and more cartoon stuff, that you were able to kind of get in front of Nickelodeon executives? How were you able to do that?
Well, now they hadn't yet started their cartoon journey yet. So what I was developing the head puppet, Dottie, and there was a show on Ha. There was Comedy Central, a comedy channel, right? And Ha. There was a show called Random Acts of Variety on, and I went on there with Dottie as a waitress, and in a little diner. And I think it's Manny showed that. It's online. And first of all, do you know Manny?
From the Comedy Store?
No,
or I mean Comedy Store?
No. Again, Manny from the Comedy Store. What a sweet guy.
Give a picture of
him. You know of Manny from the Comedy Store?
Well, the Comedy Cellar, yeah, in New York. I remember hearing about him a lot, but. So, okay, yeah. Sweet
man. So Manny is our super fan.
He's like a historian.
He's like a Wienerville historian. He does all the specials about Wienerville now, and he wrote our Wikipedia page. So
he's on YouTube and stuff too. He did like a 30th anniversary special. He built like a whole Wienerville replica set, and like his
that's amazing.
He did his own bony hand puppet too. It like really looks amazing.
Amazing guy. Okay, so random acts of variety. I have the little puppet set of Dottie, and I start interacting with actors, bringing actors onto my puppet set. So, and I got on maybe 8 of their shows. So I kind of developed Wienerville type of thing, and then the producer said to me that I should have a village where everyone lives. So I said, okay, do you want to produce it? And she said no, but I went on to one of the sections on there was a puppet segment called That's Not Fair, where I'm the game show host in the puppet set, bring people on, and comedy, it was going to be Comedy Central. The two came together. Comedy Central made that their very first pilot of my That's Not Fair with me and the puppets. And when they were done with filming it, they tested it, and it said it tests too young for their demographics. My manager's sister-in-law was in development of Nickelodeon.
Okay.
We brought it to her, and they said, we're looking for it exactly like this show.
Yeah, so, and it provided, it was like a true like a variety show that you remembered from the 1970s, where you have musical acts, you have guest stars that showed up, you have different cast of and cavalcade of characters, yet they were mainly played by you, which was hilarious. And and you're talking to Dottie, who's played by Marc Weiner, when Marc Weiner in real life, it was just, it was such a surreal show that has kind of made this comeback for especially online, of people that I'll see people going like, remember how weird this show was? And it's like, yeah, that's the point. It was weird, but kids are weird. Adults are weird. Everybody's weird. And it brought something out. And that's why I said there was something quaint about it. There was vaudevillian or burlesque to it that I really liked. And for you being a longtime street performer, you at that point had been street performing for what, 20 plus years by the time you got the show, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you were on you were a favorite at all these places. This is you on the MDA, the Jerry Lewis telethon back in 1993, performing. It's just all of these puppets. It just brings back so many memories, and
that whole routine is burned into my brain too.
So were you surprised by the success from the show, that it started out as, it was like what, chunks of 2-hour specials that they were playing on the weekends, and it just exploded in popularity to the point where you're hosting their version of New Year's Rockin' Eve?
Well, it was actually, we did 12 minutes of material, and then they showed those classic cartoons. And so that would make the half hour, and then they put 4 of them together on Sunday. So that gave us, the 2-hour block that you were talking about.
Okay, yeah, and but it just really, like I said, it took off for a lot of people, and it was around, and it was in reruns for a long time. But you even though it wasn't renewed, you still stayed with Nickelodeon doing a lot of voiceover work with them. I guess talk about that relationship, how you were able to have that show and still kind of keep that together throughout the 90s.
So we did 2 seasons of Wienerville, and then we did 3 or 4 specials: the New Year's Eve, the Hanukkah special, election special, I think
the Yegabed.
Yegabed. Oh, that was for the National Dairy Association. So then that brought us into the later 90s. And at that point, what my friend Chris Gifford, who was executive producing Clarissa Explains It All, was starting a show called Dora the Explorer. And he asked me to come on and do the map and Swiper, for this animation show. And so then that took me, so I stayed on with Nickelodeon through all the way up until today. We just,
that's pretty incredible.
Dora's coming back again, and we just taped the first season of it. And there's actually in the movie theater, if you go to the movie theaters, I think the 28th. When's the 28th?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, tomorrow. When you go to see the Paw Patrol, I know everyone's going to rush out to see that. There's a short movie of Dora, in which Dora is Dora, Boots, Swiper. So we're in the movie theaters. So
that's great. Look at you. You're still around. So for anybody thinking like, what's Marc doing nowadays? Like, no, he's still around. He's still doing it, still plugging away, staying active. And talk about with Wienerville. And I want to get to a couple of more topics as well. But what was that process like? The writing process, the production process, the costume and design process. Was it as much of did it seem like such a labor of love
Yes.
to do that, or talk about that?
Absolutely labor of love. We were in New York City. We started up in New York City with my head writer, Ray Abruzzo, who plays Little Carmine in The Sopranos.
Oh, yes.
Great guy, funny. And Scott Fellows was one of our main writers. Scott Fellows went on to produce so many shows on Nickelodeon.
Ned's, right?
Ned's Declassified, the boy band.
What, the Naked Brothers band he did?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we have this great writing staff, and then we kind of put together these scripts. Then we go down to Florida and we meet this amazing art department and puppeteer Dave Jordan, Wavy Davy. Just great guy. He's the one who created Boney, and he was my puppet master. And great art directors and great costume people, and everybody's having fun putting this wacky show together, and the Wienerizer, and then the Playland. Do you remember second season Playland, where we have those creamerizer guns that come out and we're shooting whipped cream at each other?
Oh, yes.
I remember there was this guy, Taylor, who was in charge. He created all these things for Nickelodeon. He was the set designer, and Byron Taylor, amazing, talented person who he created the Wienerizer. I said to him, I want something to shrink people. And he goes, okay. I go down to Florida, and there it is, this big machine. And,
when I was a kid, I always thought, I'm like, did they really do that? Like, you really did it. It's theater of the mind now, like you kind of see how it is today. But as a kid, I'm like, wait, are they really shrinking them? Do they have one? I watched too many Looney Tunes cartoons of somebody being trapped in some kind of compressor, and then they turn out small with this big head, and you're like, did they really do that? And right. It was amazing for a show. Was it how was the budget on a show, something like that?
I don't know. I wasn't involved in the money aspect of it, so I'm sure it wasn't great. But they let us buy things, and we would break them up and make other things out of them.
Well, you made do, and it was quite a show, and just still talking about it to this day is just brings back all these memories. And what's funny is with you having that background here, because I have another video that I found. Actually, this is what before Wienerville, was a lot of it was, I found this clip because I always go on, I see these, I follow the Evening at the Improv YouTube account, and seeing you up on the Evening at the Improv. So this is 1981 right here. And you're up there. So I'm assuming this is the one on Melrose.
81 or before 81?
It says 1981 because I think that's what the year it launched was, 81. Is this the one with Bud Friedman in the corner?
Yeah. Well, I had already, by 81, I was doing Saturday Night Live. So I think this might have been, it says 81, but I think it's a little bit, this is definitely earlier than 81.
Okay.
That was my routine. That was
very polished, right?
Yeah. And this is the LA one, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I think by then they may have closed the New York one.
Oh,
I could be wrong, but
the New York one stayed open. It was his wife ran, Silver Friedman ran that one.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
Silver Friedman actually gave me the idea to. She showed me a little boxing glove cigarette holder, and she said, this might be good for your puppets. And then so I put two of them on Rocco's hands. Do you know those little cigarette lighter and little boxing gloves?
Yes.
Keychains, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
oh yeah, I remember those.
So then, yeah, I don't know if we can do this puppet today.
but even still, it's just you can even do it no matter what. But it's meaning whatever kind of puppet nowadays. But it's funny because doing a puppet act nowadays, like because I do stand up as well, and I remember for a long time people would say like, oh, you bring a guitar on stage or you have props or a puppet or whatever, that's hack. And I'm thinking it's not hack. It's not like what I like having that variety, just being a straight monologist on stage with the brick backdrop and a microphone and going like, so did you hear about this going on in the news? I'm like, give me something a little bit different. And if I were in that stage in the early 80s, or even if I'm on stage or if I'm off stage and I'm in the audience seeing a puppet act in 2023, I think I would love that. Right. I think I love that variety. I think in with the pure monologist stand-up, the purists out there that are like, I kind of want somebody who's going to go up there, make me think. And I'm like, sometimes I don't want to think. I just want to laugh.
Where do you work? Which clubs?
Kind of locally. I've done a couple of. I did the Ice House, and I've done was it Ha Ha Cafe out in L.A. But I've done some stuff in New York, but mainly in Ohio.
What city in Ohio are you in?
I'm in Cleveland. So
Cleveland was one of my very first. That's kind of like where I got my start on the road as a comic at the Cleveland Comedy Club.
Okay. Yep. Unfortunately long gone, like all of them, but in the comedy boom.
Right. Dino Vince, and Dino Vance, Dino Vince. And we started in his comedy club. And who's the guy on that improv show from Cleveland?
Drew Carey.
Drew Carey was this up and coming guy who, was like the MC one night, and when I was in Cleveland on stage, Saturday Night Live had called me to tell me, Joe Piscopo called me and asked me if I could be on the following week's show, but I was in Cleveland, Ohio.
Really?
Yeah.
So how long were you on SNL? Because that was around the time of the second phase of when when Belushi and everybody, and then you were getting the Gene Domanian years where they had Gilbert Gottfried was on there of all people, right. Joe Piscopo, Eddie Murphy. But what was that like? And how long did you last there?
Okay, so Silver Friedman told me about the boxing gloves. Mm-hmm. Right? So then I started developing Rocco as a boxer. Joe Piscopo, John DeBellis, who we at the Improv, we all auditioned to be on the show in the summer, the end of the summer. John DeBellis gets hired as a writer. He brings Joe Piscopo on. Joe Piscopo mid-season brings me on to do that boxing puppet on Joe Piscopo live Saturday Night Live Sports. Okay. So we go on, we do it. Ray Abruzzo, my director and writer, we work up this routine. Rocco does really well on that show. They say, as soon as we're done, they say, you're coming back the next week. We come back with Wendula, who was that puppet, the dancing puppet, who was going to fight Rocco.
Okay.
So Wendula, the second week, Wendula comes on, and we wrote a rap song for him. Eddie Murphy helped rewrite this song. Wendula kills. The next week we come back, the two puppets are going to fight each other. Don King, the fight promoter, calling the fight with Joe Piscopo, and they have the fight on the show. The whole show was centered around this boxing match. And then I get a contract for 5 more weeks to finish the season, but then Gene gets fired.
Oh yes, and that was what's his name? Dick Ebersol took over.
Dick Ebersol comes back, and he tells me, everyone comes together in his office. He tells me I'm coming back. So when everyone was getting ready to come back, they tell me that they want to use Mr. Bill. Remember Mr. Bill?
Oh yeah.
They want to use Mr. Bill the first week, but then I'm going to come back the second week. Second week comes, we're in the read-through. Al Franken is going to be the host. I just start showing them what I'm going to do, and someone comes in, and there was a writer's strike, and the writers killed the season. And then the following year, that's when I'm in Cleveland. Joe Piscopo calls up and tells me to come back. They want me to do Captain Bob, my sea captain routine. They want Captain Bob to be on the show.
I mean, it's you were really all over the place. Max, what do you think? How weird is it that all of these who are now considered comedy icons, like Eddie Murphy and Lorne Michaels, and like all of this in this area, that your dad has had a hand in all of this? He really has kind of been a showbiz Forrest Gump in a way.
Yeah.
Forrest.
What do you want to know?
Well, no, it's interesting because like when I said how it runs in the family, that I'm sure you've had your run-ins with people, and whether like big time artists or musicians and everything, and you're like your dad pats the torch onto you, and then you're like, hey, I'm up on stage playing with this person, and this person's in the studio, and this person helped me record or lay down a track or something like that.
Are you asking for like parallels or?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
There really aren't so much for my career yet, but it's just so cool what he's done. And then you get to meet a lot of these people, and they're just as anxious or weird as everybody else are. So there's like the thing we see on screen and then who they are behind the screen, and it's I like to be, and I'm sure you do too, I love being around weirdos, like people who are just like they have to do it. It's this manic thing where if they don't get it out, what are they going to do?
Right.
It's like you need, sometimes, this is a way for people to overcome like learning disabilities, and this is, they got bullied or whatever it is. And this, whatever happened.
A form of therapy for a lot of people.
It really is.
For all of us.
Yeah.
You, I, we're all in it.
Yeah. I mean,
work it out on stage.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing. Like, it's amazing that from that stuff comes Wienerville or any of these things. And it's crazy, it's really insane, like truly all
like
of
your
these
podcast,
things.
like your podcast.
Yeah.
You just had this idea. Let me just do it, right?
Kind of. I mean, it was one of those where I accumulated these skills over the years of radio. It just didn't pay a lot anymore. So I work a regular job now, and I do this as saying it again, a labor of love. And I get it, but it's really not too much labor. It's I get to talk to you guys. I mean, this is what's fun about it. And but also you got to put in the work, and you got to continue putting the stuff out there for the audience and everything. And one thing I asked this because with a lot of comedian friends about the getting on stage and performing, and if you still get those butterflies, like when you know that it's 5 minutes till showtime. And I ask both of you, do you still get that like pit in your stomach? You're like, oh, I don't want to disappoint, and you get those butterflies. Do you both of you still get that?
I think I'm sure you can relate to it, that there's always that that fear, because you have no idea who's going to be in the audience. You don't know what kind of vibe is going to be there. I mean, I just took an improv class in the city. I forget, I don't remember the school right now off the top of my head, but I remember I showed up a little bit late to our class show, and it was like the first time I'd been on stage in a pretty long time. And it was like, you get freaked out, but then I don't know, I feel like people who are going to be performers, you just end up, you get on stage and then you feel good. Like the minute you start getting into your rhythm, and you tell me what it's like for you, but it's, you get there and then you're like, I'm here, like, and then the juices start flowing, and whatever kind of charisma you have is going to come through, hopefully. And you just kind of have to like survive on there and do your thing. And it's fun. Like, you find ways to reset and do your thing. But yeah, for sure, I get nervous. I'm sure everybody should at some point, because it's kind of insane. You're getting up in front of strangers who you have no idea. You're like, this is a part of my soul, and please don't kill me. It's like, don't yell at me, don't make fun of me. I'm here to make you laugh or to entertain you. I mean, how about you?
Yeah, all of that. And you want to get that first laugh,
right?
That's the approach that I always took. As soon as you got that first laugh, then you can relax, and then jump when you go on stage, right? What's it like for you?
Well, because of so the comedy club I usually perform at, and I go up, the owner just passed away over the summer. And it kind of like, it was a real kick in the gut for me, and going up there knowing that he's not there. And he was an eccentric Lebanese guy that would just drop F-bombs the whole time and yell at you. But he wasn't yelling, like, he wasn't mad at you. He would just yell because that's what he did. And so many like big time comedians would go there, like they could play theater gigs and say, but I still want to play the Funny Stop in Cuyahoga Falls, which used to be called Hilarities. And so it was kind of a gut punch for me over the summer, but eventually I'm starting to do some more stuff. I'm getting booked again. And I just did last weekend with the comedian Carlos Mencia. And I was working with him for a bit. And it takes a little bit, because you're going in front of an audience that doesn't know who you are, that probably, if you're an opener, if you're a host or an MC, they may not know who you are after, but you hope that you're going to make some kind of impact on them, whether positive or negative. That's why, like, whenever comedians start getting political on stage, I'm like, you know what? I would rather the whole crowd love me or the whole crowd hate me, not half the crowd like me and half the crowd hate me. So I'm like, I'm going to go up on stage. I'm going to tell my jokes, get off stage, and then meet you after the show. Maybe we'll have a drink or whatever the case. So yeah, it is a feeling of, it's nice to get that feeling, get that first joke out of there. And then you get a couple rolling, and then you can go, okay, now you can come with me on this journey that we're having. So it is a nice release. And I actually have to ask this, because I was doing the research about your faith, and how because being in showbiz, especially in Hollywood or anything, is that you're having a lot of people who are more secular, atheist, whatever. They're not keeping Sabbath, they're not going to church, they don't really care that much about faith, but you kind of went in the opposite direction, and you have kept Sabbath, and you have been your faith has played a huge role in your life, to the point where you're not performing in times when normal comedy clubs are performing. Talk a little bit about that, how you kind of had the little bit of, even though you've always been a religious man, that you kind of took it to a new level, especially as your career continued.
Well, here again, Cleveland is a first.
Really?
Yeah, that I was performing, doing my stand up, and and then I decided I was not going to become more observant of observing the Jewish Sabbath, which means that I can't drive in a car. I shouldn't be working on Friday nights. So I slowly worked my way into it, because, in the comedy clubs, Friday and Saturday nights, the big nights. So my rabbi told me that if I have to work, it was, just go there, but don't get in a car afterwards. He was slowly allowing me to,
a little dispensation.
Yeah. So, and if the microphone was turned on for somebody else and it wasn't turned on for me, I could speak into the microphone. So Cleveland and Dino, the owner of that club, was very accommodating. So my hotel was, the club was downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And the hotel was maybe 2 or 3 miles away. So I would perform, and then afterwards I would not get in the car, but I would walk to the hotel, and Dino would drive alongside me so I wouldn't get, in any trouble. And so Cleveland was a very important part of my religious beginnings,
Your awakening.
Yeah. So thank you, Cleveland. Woo!
There you go, Cleveland. We do rock, I guess.
Right, yeah.
Max, have you kept along with that, or is it you're still waiting for yours, or what? How have you been, if you don't mind me asking, with your faith?
I'm agnostic,
Okay.
for years, yeah. But I'm, respectful of everything that he does. But yeah, not for me, but it's yeah. Everybody, I think, finds their own relationship with it and their own way to make it work, and it's so personal. It's such you could put a blanket term on it, but I think everybody finds whatever they need to help them through, understanding life and connecting to whatever they want God to be for them. And it's just it's a beautiful thing, and it's a personal thing, I think, for everybody. So yeah, for me, I'm agnostic.
So what you're saying is you have a lot of Friday gigs.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, guys, this has been a fantastic podcast. I love getting a chance to talk to both of you. And actually, I got to play this really quick, just because this is you on John Biner's Bazaar, and the reason I played it is John Biner was a former podcast guest who's great.
Really?
Yep, yeah, he put a book out a couple of years ago. He's 85 years old, and yeah, he's on Facebook, and he's living down in Florida right now. He's enjoying mostly retired life.
He was so kind to me for this show, and this show that was produced by Bob
Einstein.
Bob Einstein, another great guy.
Super Dave.
Yep.
Which I miss him. I wish I was able to get. I tried getting him on my show. I didn't have my podcast yet, but I was still in radio. I was trying to get a hold of Super Dave, but he, I guess his health had been going downhill, and I got a response from somebody, and they said, he's not doing interviews right now. When I get that response from somebody who's in their 70s or 80s, I go, I think I know what this means. But no, this is John was great being on my podcast. It was a lot of fun. But it's also a lot of fun is having both of you on my show. And again, first of all, Max Weiner, mindofmax.com. I'll pull it up again here for people watching on the video, but that's where we can go and find all of all things to know about Max Weiner, and especially getting going on YouTube Music. In fact, I'm actually going to pull it up because I don't have Spotify, but I do have YouTube Music. So I'm going to give you a like here and start listening to your music when I go to the gym. Or where's the best place I can listen to your music? Is it at the gym? Is it maybe having a couple of pops at home? Or
Interesting you mentioned it's actually a flotation tank is the best place. You just really, no, I'm kidding. Anywhere to walk, it doesn't matter.
Excellent. I will, yes. I will hit a like button there and subscribe to you. So next time I get new music from you, I'll be listening to it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Mark. And Marc Weiner, my the other guest here on the podcast. Where is there anything? Are you doing any gig work? Are you doing any?
Go to the movie theater and see
right.
the Dora movie. The short movie, or if you want to watch the last Dora movie.
There's a trippy scene in there with you.
Yep. About 2 years ago, it came out. 2 years ago, it came out. Dora and the Lost City.
Sure.
I'm the map in that, and watch this coming season of Dora the Explorer.
And where's that? Is that on Nickelodeon, or is that on one of the
Nickelodeon?
Paramount?
Probably on Paramount, Nickelodeon. But I'm Swiper in the new Dora the Explorer.
Two of some of the busiest men out there right now, Max and Marc Weiner. Both of you, thank you so much for being here on the Check Your Brain podcast. I wish I did this in June had I known. But that's okay. It's September, and I'm putting this out. It's gonna be early October, and doesn't have to be the third weekend in June for it to be Father's Day. It could be any day, and it's so glad. I have a great relationship with my father, and it's so great that you guys as well have such a nice, close relationship. It's very heartwarming.
What's your dad's name?
My dad's name is also Mark, but with a K.
Oh, well, say hello to Mark and tell him he has a very nice son.
Yeah.
Well, I also have a brother, and he's probably the nicer one. I'm just, but thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much. And thank you to the listeners of the Check Your Brain podcast. Again, go to patreon.com/Tony Mazur if you like this podcast and you want more of me. Why would you? But hey, who knows? Just trying to fish it out there just in case anybody wants more content. Just $3 a month at patreon.com/Tony Mazur. But if you're just only listening for free, I've got another podcast for you coming up next Wednesday on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Again, my name is Tony Mazur. Thank you for listening and watching the Check Your Brain podcast. And again, be back with you next week. Bye, everyone.